My boss screwed me out of a year's worth of travel expenses and 6 months of government sick leave. So I made sure he lost the one thing he had built his entire life around, his dream home, a home that was 30 times more valuable than what he owed me. I may have limped out of that job with a broken leg, but he crawled back to a life of complete ruin. When the 2008 financial crash hit, I was fresh out of school, an educated computer tech, full of hope and completely broke. College? Gone. Promises from tech companies? All cut. So I fell into a spiral of dead-end jobs. Save a bit, get fired, spend it all, repeat. My 20s were brutal. And then I snapped. I needed out. I needed something different. And I found it in welding. Thanks to a lucky break and a state-sponsored program, I trained for free. And within days of finishing the course, I got hired as a field welder. That's when I met him, Rat Boss. We'll call him RB. RB ran a small crew of field welders traveling all across Europe. He promised to teach me real welding, the kind you don't learn in school, and he delivered. For 6 years, it was hellishly hard work, but I loved it. We were like brothers, traveling, working, drinking, laughing. And RB? Back then, he was the kind of boss you'd take a bullet for. He once took out a high-interest loan just to pay our salaries on time. That's the kind of loyalty he inspired. At least, he used to. By year 7, everything changed. The old crew left. RB stayed home to be with his family. He made me foreman and sent me new workers. But these guys weren't like the old crew. Short-term, lazy. Some were addicts or criminals. The job still got done, but I carried all of it on my back. Then came the pandemic. And with it, everything fell apart. Workers got worse. Wages came in late. Travel reimbursements? Gone. And RB started playing games with our pay. But the breaking point came one night, 3 a.m. I got a call from the client. One of our guys got arrested for drunk and disorderly. And guess who had to pick him up? Me, the responsible foreman. When I got home, I sat down with RB. I told him I was done unless he paid what he owed me. A year's worth of travel expenses, thousands. And sick leave? Not a cent. He apologized, blamed his wife, who also ran the business. Said he was tied up, but promised to pay me half by end of September. He asked me to stay on. Minimum wage, just a few more months. Stupidly, I agreed. But as the deadline got closer, my trust faded. Then he gave me that look, the fakest smile I'd ever seen. I knew then he was going to screw me. So I made a plan. If he didn't pay by the agreed date, he'd come home to a 30-day resignation notice. But fate intervened, in the worst way. A week before the deadline, I slipped on a ramp and destroyed my ankle. Emergency surgery, 2 weeks in the hospital, 6 months before I could walk again. Did the money come? Of course not. Not the back pay. Not even my wage. And worse, my mom, trying to help, used my emergency savings to pay for scheduled home renovations while I was unconscious. I was broke, in debt, and still, RB sent me nothing. Even the sick leave that was supposed to come from the government never arrived, because he had to forward it, and he didn't. He kept the money meant for me. At that point, I was done being the better man. This man I trusted for 7 years betrayed me in every way. He left me to rot in a hospital bed, penniless. But here's the thing about being a foreman. You see everything, invoices, paper trails, the kind of details that government agencies love. And I kept all of it. So the moment I could limp out of my home, painkillers in one pocket, evidence in the other, I reported him. To everyone. Let me tell you something about RB. He lived in a cramped apartment in the city with his wife and 2 kids. But he had a dream. A house. A massive house. He bought the land years ago. Brick by brick he built it. When we last talked, he was just 6 months away from moving in. It was everything he worked for. And now, it became his coffin. The labor inspectorate told me. This man broke half the labor laws in this country. Once the government moved, they moved fast. His accounts, frozen, business licenses, suspended, passports, revoked, all employees, terminated, with mandatory severance pay. He filed for bankruptcy shortly after. And to pay the fines, he had to sell that dream house, the one he spent 7 years building. Gone. He and his family went crawling back to that tiny apartment. No space, no hope, no future. He called me, screaming. How could I do this to him? After all we went through? I let him scream. Then I told him, "You lied. You betrayed me. You left me in a hospital bed with nothing. You're not my friend. You're a rat. And from now on, speak to my lawyer." Then I hung up. I only got 1 month of sick leave out of the bankruptcy. No travel pay, no back wages. But it's okay, because he lost everything. This wasn't just revenge, this was justice. Not an eye for an eye, not a tooth for a tooth, a face for an eye, a whole life for a lie. I stood up again, literally and metaphorically. But Rat Boss, he's still crawling, and he might never reach rock bottom, because he's buried even deeper. If you've made it this far, thank you. This story may sound extreme, but I lived every second of it. And if nothing else, let this be a lesson. Don't betray the people who built your empire, because they might be the ones to tear it down. Have you ever dealt with a toxic coworker? Share your story in the comments. We read everyone. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more real stories like this.